read 8 books this month, which I'm pretty sure I've never done in my life before. Whew. So I'm just going to start off with the first book I read this month, known as Rent a Boyfriend by Gloria Chow. In Rent a Boyfriend, Chloe Wang is just a college student who is fed up with her parents trying to dictate her life and deciding who she's going to marry. So Chloe decides to hire a fake boyfriend from a company to impress her parents over Thanksgiving break. Now, this works really well. Her parents are impressed that Chloe can find a boyfriend who's just as good, if not better, than the man they want her to marry. But Chloe ends up catching feelings for her fake boyfriend, like a clown. I enjoyed this book because it has a kick-ass heroine in Chloe. It has fake dating, the oh no, I think I'm in love with you, and it also has a toxic community, which I thought was an interesting thing to add in the story, because you see the difference between the way Drew, which is the love interest, grew up, and the way Chloe is growing up in her community, and the way her expectations were placed on her. You also see the way Drew is growing up and the way he just failed to live up to his parents' expectations, and how he's just in control of his own life, which is what Chloe wants. So I like that foil between them. I ended up giving this book 3 stars. I mentioned Rent Boyfriend is new adult and Asian American lit. It's also very cozy and a very cute spring read if you're just transitioning from winter into spring, like we are here in the northern hemisphere. Learned that one from Animal Crossing. Okay, so the next novel I read is actually book 1 in a series by Rebecca Weatherspoon. The first novel is called Better Off Red. So in Better Off Red, Ginger Carmichael is a freshman in college. She is not really thinking of joining a sorority, but her roommate is, and since Ginger is such a good roommate and a good friend, she decides to pledge with her roommate Amy. So they go through all the shopping around for sororities, and they end up deciding to pledge to ABO, Alpha Beta Omega, which is just a sorority full of a bunch of hot girls. And since Ginger is questioning her sexuality, she's very much interested in seeing what this sorority is all about. However, it turns out ABO is a sorority full of vampires, and once you pledge ABO, you are then in a lifelong commitment to keep vampires secret and to feed them your blood. Ginger ends up agreeing to this, and she ends up falling in love with the head vampire queen of the house, Camila. So I enjoyed this story because it's a sapphic romance, it's set in college, and the love interest is Mexican American. And I love all the diversity that you get in this book. So you have a very diverse group of vampires, not only because they're in college, but they're all different races. They all come from different backgrounds. And the world building of this universe I thought was super unique. And since it is a more of an adult romance, you also get included the steamy sex scenes. So I ended up giving this novel 4 drops of blood. So the next novel I ended up reading is Black Witch Magic by Mila Nix. I actually received this novel as an ARC back in November, but didn't get around to reading it until March. So in this novel, Celine Blackwell is trapped by a family curse in her small New England hometown. And Celine dreams of traveling the world and seeing everything there is to see, but since she is landlocked in her hometown, she travels through books, and which is why she ends up working as a librarian in the library. Now, Celine is also black, and she's also a witch, 2 things that kind of work against her in her small New England hometown, because there is also a rumor that her grandmother did some kind of magic spell on the town, and that's why weird things keep happening. So enter Aiden and Eddie, 2 paranormal investigators who have a show on the internet, and they have come to investigate the ghost of Celine's grandmother. But since it is the holidays, Eddie ends up getting preoccupied visiting his own family, and Aiden ends up catching feelings for Celine. However, because there is some strange occurrences going on in town, Celine and Aiden end up having to work together to figure out what the heck is going on, and they also end up dating. I ended up liking this book because we have Celine and Aiden, and they're an interracial couple. Celine is a librarian, and she's also a witch, which is super cool. And And we have this added bonus that this story is set during Christmas, but it's also very spooky, so you can have a spooky Christmas if you decide to read it during the holidays. I like this novel, but it was a little bit too insta-love for me, and I wish Aiden and Celine had more time to do some paranormal investigations, some spirit box sessions, some spooky photography, all that stuff you see in those exaggerated paranormal shows that I just love, and I eat that up. So I ended up giving this novel 3 spooky ghosts. The book I ended up reading this month is the sequel to Better Off Red by Rebecca Weatherspoon. This sequel is titled Blacker Than Blue. In Blacker Than Blue, we are reintroduced to Cleo and Benny, who were secretly dating in Better Off Red, and because of a super scary accident, Cleo ends up being turned into a vampire. And Cleo and Benny end up breaking up because of it, because of a very big misunderstanding. In Blacker Than Blue, Benny and Cleo are some jaded exes who pretend like they're not in love with each other, and they just ignore each other around the sorority house. But when Benny ends up meeting a very powerful vampire who rules Asia because of her dad, she ends up deciding that after graduation, she's just going to move to Beijing and become a feeder to the vampire ruler in Asia. When Cleo finds out that Benny is just gonna pack up and leave, she decides to finally confront her ex and talk things out and try to work things out, actually. So the rest of the novel just follows them trying to work through the mess that was their relationship before and try to fix it now that they're both older, slightly more wiser. I enjoy this novel because I loved getting back into this world that Rebecca Weatherspoon has created in her Vampire Sorority series, and I also like that Benny and Chloe were very petty exes who had actually had some communication eventually. I love to see when exes actually talk to each other and own up to their mistakes. What I didn't like about this novel is that Benny and Cleo have a kind of dom-sub relationship going on. I wasn't a huge fan of that, but if you're into that, by all means, go ahead and read this novel. And actually go ahead and read this entire series if you're a fan of LGBTQ, sapphic romances, and you love to read some very spicy sex scenes. I ended up giving Blacker Than Blue 3 butt plugs. So the next novel I read this month was actually Nocturna by Maya Monteño. I really love this series. I'm just gonna preface this now. Loved it, would recommend it. In Nocturna, Alfie is a prince who accidentally awakens an ancient power of a dead god in order to save his loved one. However, because the god's power was awakened, it is now going to take over the world and destroy it, and the world will become encompassed in shadow. So Alfie enlists the help of Finn, a shape-shifting or face-shifting thief, his cousin Luca, and a prisoner to help him contain the dark power that has been unleashed into the world. I love Nocturna because it's an idiots to lovers story courtesy of Finn and Alfie. It also offers an alternative reality of colonization in Latin America, because in Nocturna, once the conquistadores came to Latin America, eventually the indigenous people rose up and fought back against them, and they were able to reclaim their land. It's a high fantasy set in Latin America, which I don't often come across. But if you know any more, like, feel free to send them my way. I would love to read more of them. I ended up giving Nocturna 4 crescent moons. So the other series I ended up reading this month was the first 3 novels in the Aquar series, also known as A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Yes, you can call me trash, I know, but I was very curious to read this series after binging all of WithCindy's videos of it. So you can't blame me, because Cindy really sold it. I would summarize this series for you, but as I mentioned, WithCindy will do a better job of convincing you to read the series than I would, and Cindy's videos are just way more entertaining. So I'll just leave a link down below if you want to check out Cindy's videos. I ended up giving the first novel, A Court of Thorns and Roses, 3 roses. I enjoyed that it was a Beauty and the Beast retelling and overall like a fairy tale retelling, because a Beauty and the Beast element wasn't the only thing I picked up. There was also elements of Cinderella, Hades, and Persephone. And overall, I just enjoyed that. I thought it was a super cool elements to be included in the novel. The one criticism I had in A Court of Thorns and Roses is that I thought Farah should have been more mad at Tamlin when it was revealed that Tamlin lied to her the whole time about the treaty. In the novel, Farah just kind of brushes it off because she's so in love with Tamlin. She doesn't blame him for lying to her, which seemed out of character for me. The second novel in the Aquar series is titled A Court of Mist and Fury. I ended up giving this novel 4 stars, and it's by far my favorite in the series. So A Court of Mist and Fury has enemies to lovers, courtesy of Rhysand and Feyre. It also explores mental health, following the events of the previous novel, because we ended up exploring some pretty heavy stuff. A lot of heavy traumatic things happens to Farah, and in this novel we see the aftermath of what that did to Farah and Tamlin's relationship and how that is affecting Farah's mental health. You also have a surprise soulmate element in this novel, and you completely forget who the heck Tamlin is. We don't know him anymore. Bye. So I really enjoy this novel because it's just about, you know, escaping toxicity, escaping a relationship that turned toxic, and just learning to take care of yourself, love yourself again, and to heal after just being completely broken. There's a scene where we find out that Rhysand actually lied to Farah, and as I mentioned in the first novel, I thought it was weird that Farah doesn't get angry at Tamlin when she finds out that he was lying to her, but in A Court of Mist and Fury, Farah definitely gets mad at Rhysand after she discovers that he lied to her, and she doesn't really hesitate to like give him the cold shoulder and like just make him know just how pissed she is for what he did. Like I said, growth. I mean, this novel definitely inspires you to break up with your dusty ex-boyfriend and get yourself a baddie that's gonna hold your hair back when you've puking in the toilet because you had a nightmare. So the last novel in this series is known as A Court of Wings and Ruin. I ended up giving this novel 3 wings because it just wasn't my favorite. There's a lot of political intrigue, a lot of talk about war, and it kind of just bored me. It just wasn't for me. I kind of felt like the ending was also rushed, but that's just my opinion. I did enjoy the beginning of this novel where you end up seeing Farah being a little chaos demon and just destroying Tamlin's life. I mean, I can't blame her after the events of the last novel where you see Tamlin just really mess things up royally for her and her family. Those are all the novels I ended up reading this month. Did you read any cool novels this month? Watch any cool series? Any cool K-dramas that you want to recommend me? Leave them down below in the comments. I will definitely read them. Yes. So until next time, I shall be living in Libros, working on DIYs, or watching K-dramas. Alright, see you next time. Bye, book lovers!